not going to apologize for how late this video is, because regardless of whenever it goes up, these are still my favorite books of 2014. So, it's finally time, guys. We're finally going to find out what my favorite books of 2014 were. Are you excited? Because I know I am. I'm not doing top 14 books of 2014 because, as other booktubers have already stated, that's a little bit much, but I'm also not doing top 10 because I felt like I couldn't fit all my favorite books from this past year into a top 10. So I'm doing a top 12, which works because it's kind of like a book I read every month, technically, kind of. Quick thing before we start, I actually only have with me 4 of the books that I read this year. The rest are either at my house or were library books. In fact, actually, most of them were library books, so I don't have them anymore, and I wasn't gonna check them out just to do this video. Alright, let's get started, and while it was hard to categorize these books are in order. At number 14, we have Wonder by R.J. Palacio. I read this all the way back in January of last year, so over a year ago now. I have a review of it on my channel, which I will link below. Wonder is the story of Augie Pullman, who has severe facial deformities and has been homeschooled all of his life because of this, but now he's going to middle school for the first time. The story follows multiple perspectives, Augie's and other people whom he touches or who touch him, and sort of what Augie's first year in middle school is like. This book is beautiful, it's endearing, it's sweet, and it's honest. It deals with bullying in a way that's truthful and honest, but not too aggressive. I don't think that's the right word, but that's the word I'm going to use. I really think that this book is going to be a modern classic and that it's a good read for anyone at any age. At number 11, we have Winger by Andrew Smith. Winger follows Ryan Dean West, who is a 14-year-old boy who I believe is a junior at a boarding school. He's definitely younger and has skipped a couple grades. So the story is about his romantic exploits, he plays rugby, and how other characters sort of react to him and how it's kind of difficult for him in a school environment because he's so much younger. So when you hear that synopsis, you think, oh, okay, light, happy, fun read. And it is, but the end completely destroyed me. Like, all of a sudden it just and everything happens. I really liked Ryan Dean West's voice. I also liked the little comics that were drawn throughout the novel, and while I was aware that there was a big emotional punch in the gut, I still didn't see it coming until like right before it happened. At number 10, we have Jane the Fox and Me by Fanny Britt. Now this book is categorized both as a children's picture book and as a graphic novel. I would categorize it more as a graphic novel. Jane the Fox and Me follows a young, I believe, Canadian girl who is reading Jane Eyre for the first time and is bullied and doesn't have a lot of friends. It is an absolutely beautiful, yet simple and poignant story. I wish I had the book here to show you because a lot of what makes this book so amazing is the artwork. Most of the book is told in very bland, gray, brown, muted tones, but when you get to the sections that talk about Jane Eyre and when you get to the end of the book, you see the pages in full color. This is another book I would definitely say is going to become a modern classic because it's such a beautiful, poignant tale, and reading it almost made me cry. It was so lovely. I think this is a great read for anyone who has felt a strong connection to a book, anyone who has ever felt like an outsider or alone, or anyone who has ever been bullied. At number 9, we have To All the Boys I Loved Before by Jenny Han. To All the Boys I've Loved Before follows Laura Jean Covey, a girl who, to kind of purge herself of her romantic inclinations, writes letters to the boy she's in love with and then hides them under her bed. But one day, all these letters get mailed out. So from that synopsis, you think, okay, this is gonna be like a pretty basic, cutesy, fun, contemporary, nothing really special. I was so wrong. What's really wonderful about this story is, first of all, that the main character is a character of color. Laura Jean and her family are half Korean, but also that the story isn't really about the romance. That does play a part, but the story is really about Laura Jean's relationship with her family and her sisters. I would recommend this book if you really love contemporaries, if you have kind of a casual interest, or if you would like to read contemporaries but you're a little bit wary. I think this is a great book for pretty much anyone who's interested in the contemporary young adult genre. At number 8, we have Persepolis by Merejane Satrapi. Now, I've only read the first volume of Persepolis, which chronicles Merejane Satrapi's life in Iran during the Islamic Revolution. The second graphic novel chronicles her life when she goes to live in, I believe, France, and sort of her young adulthood and maturity into a young woman. The novel that I read, though, only touches on her childhood. What I think is so powerful about this graphic novel is that the Islamic Revolution isn't just a backdrop. It plays an extremely crucial role in Morajane's life, and she presents it not only very accurately and factually, but also with a very personal touch. The war becomes less disconnected from the reader, and it becomes much more emotional and personal, because that's how it is for Morajane. At number 7, we have The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This book has been a long time coming. My first encounter with The Road was in 10th grade in my honors English class. It was on our summer reading list as one of the options. I didn't read it, but a lot of the people in my class did, and they all hated it. So when I found out we were reading it for my honors 101 class, I was really excited and kind of apprehensive, because I've heard of people really enjoying it, but I've also heard of people who absolutely hate it and don't understand the point of it at all. The Road follows an unnamed father and son in a post-apocalyptic world trying to survive. That's it. That's all that happens. What Cormac McCarthy does is create this really desolate, barren landscape and then use really barren, simplistic language to describe it. Although sometimes he'll throw in a really complex metaphor that at first is really kind of weird and difficult to understand, but the closer you read it, it takes on a deeper meaning, and that's really interesting to me. I think part of the reason I enjoyed this book so much was because I had an absolutely fabulous Honors 101 class. After we read the book, we discussed it in class, talked about our interpretations, talked about passages that stood out to us, and talked about how this book translates Cormac McCarthy's view of human nature and humanity, and my honors professor really loves this book. This is actually his favorite book, so it was really interesting to hear his perspective as well. So while I think I would have really loved this book had I just read it on my own and then analyzed it by myself, I think my enjoyment of it increased exponentially getting to discuss it with such a great group of people. At number 6, we have The Awakening by Kate Chopin. This is one of the earliest feminist works following a woman named Edna in Creole society and her awakening as a woman and her own person. I mean, it's feminist literature, so of course I'm gonna eat it up. You either love this book or you hate it, and I absolutely loved it. The language was intoxicating, I was completely sucked in, and while of course Edna isn't a likable character, I really enjoyed analyzing her and picking her apart and sort of delving into her psyche and trying to figure out why she does what she does, and through figuring that out, discover just how messed up a society she's living in and how horrifying it is that she's being put in this box. This is a really beautiful, tragic story, and I had an absolute trip reading it. I loved moving through the prose, and I loved figuring out what exactly Edna was thinking, and I really enjoyed seeing what impact her society had on her. It's a fascinating read. At number 6, we have Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. If you haven't heard of this already, we've got a husband and wife, Nick and Amy Dunn. Amy Dunn goes missing. It looks like the husband did it, but we're not really sure what happens. While you can read this as just a straight mystery thriller purely for entertainment, what's really fun is to analyze the themes that Gillian Flynn uses throughout the book and try to figure out what her overall message is. There's a lot of really interesting statements about marriage and really knowing the person that you're married to, and statements about how people change based on what they want people to think of them or what they think people want. And who are we really but the different characters that we put on for other people? What's our actual true self, and do we even really know? Another thing I think is really not talked about enough is the way that this book is written. I can't think of how to describe the writing style. It reads almost kind of like a magazine. It's not journalistically simple and factual, but it's not overly flowy and verbose. It has a really intoxicating style of writing that I've never really encountered before. I think part of that comes from the fact that both Nick and Amy write for magazines, and so that kind of writing style is used in this book. I could be overanalyzing, but I feel like that's a pretty good guess to make. At number 5, we've got Wild by Cheryl Strayed, another book to movie adaptation. I have discovered that I really, really like environmental, creative nonfiction, sort of the searching for yourself, within the wilderness and nature. I initially picked up Wild because it sounded so much like Into the Wild, which is one of my favorite books. A person going into the wilderness with very little experience, trying to heal themselves from a traumatic event, or find themselves or figure out who they are. The difference between Wild and Into the Wild is that this has less death and more sex. There are so many beautiful passages about personhood and about forgiving yourself and who you really are, and this wonderful commentary about her relationship with the wilderness. And I had so much fun reading this book. It was absolutely beautiful and amazing, and it just makes me want to go out and become more one with the outside world. At number 4, we've got Hamlet, which I read in my senior AP English class. It seems like so long ago now, because it kind of is. Basic rundown of Hamlet for those of you who don't know. Hamlet's the Prince of Denmark. His father is dead. His uncle is married to his mom. There's a lot of angst and death. I'm a sucker for good language and symbolism. Give me something gorgeous I can analyze, and Hamlet provides on both of those fronts so well. Again, part of this comes from the environment I was in when I was reading this. I had a really great English class and a really great English teacher who discussed with us all the different interpretations and themes and different symbols and how the language can be interpreted. And there are so many amazing themes and motifs about death and religion and angst and doing what's right versus doing what's wrong and gender roles, and just, you can interpret everything in here so many different ways, and I absolutely love that. If you haven't read Hamlet, you need to get on that. In the runner-up spot, we have Slaughterhouse-Five by Mr. Kurt Vonnegut. So let me try to tell you what Slaughterhouse-Five is about. Billy Pilgrim has been abducted by aliens and has therefore become unstuck in time. So he's living all of his life at once, going from one moment to the next, in his past, his present, and his future, just kind of jumping around. But the entirety of the narrative revolves around his experience in Dresden when the city was bombed during World War II. What's so interesting about Kurt Vonnegut is he manages to combine science fiction with literary fiction. The thing about Kurt Vonnegut's fiction is you can't read it just once and hope to understand it. You have to read it through at least twice, go do your research, and analyze it from there. It helps, I think, to discuss it in a group. I really formed a connection with this book and had so much fun figuring out what it was trying to say to me and what exactly it wanted to express. It was so well executed, and everyone should read this book at least twice in their life, because you need to read it twice to fully understand it. And coming in at number 1, we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt. In case you didn't know, Donna Tartt is from the lovely state of Mississippi, born in Greenwood, went to Ole Miss for, I believe, a year before her professors were like, "You're too smart, you need to go somewhere else." Secret History follows these 5 classic students at a prestigious college on the East Coast, and the driving force of the novel is that they murdered one of their classmates. So the first half of the novel is building up to this murder, and the second half of the novel discusses the slow unraveling of the members of the group and how their group dynamic sort of crumbles in on itself. This novel is so disgustingly beautiful. It's wonderfully written. The way that the atmosphere and the emotions are described just almost makes me hurt because it's so achingly gorgeous. It's also a really interesting concept for a novel. Like, I don't think I've really ever read anything with quite the same idea that The Secret History has. What's also really cool is the fact that there are some things in this novel that are so utterly overdramatic and ridiculous, but I found myself believing them with complete sincerity because of the way they were written. The novel is quite a hunker, and it did take me a while to get through, but it was worth absolutely every minute, and I think it's good that the novel is so long, because that way you have to take your time to get through it and really savor every moment you're spending with the story and the language. So those are my top 12 books of 2014. Let me know in the comments if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. Tell me what your top books of 2014 were in the comments below. Link me a video if you made one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.